You don't belong here. Get on your knees." That was the first thing she heard that morning before the coffee smell even faded from the street before her heels had a chance to click twice more against the sidewalk. Detective Carl Jennings's voice wasn't just a command, it was a verdict. His shadow loomed over her like a wall, his hand heavy on her shoulder, forcing her down onto the grass in front of a house she'd never been inside. The cold barrel of a gun followed, pressing against the back of her neck. Her only crime, walking down a street she'd paid taxes for in a town where people like her were expected to drive through quickly, not stroll in. Amara Price was 32, a criminal defense attorney who'd spent her career teaching terrified teenagers how to survive police stops. She'd worn her sharpest cherry red suit that morning, thinking it'd give her an edge of confidence at the community legal clinic she was headed to. Instead, that suit became a target. Carl's voice cut through the silence of that perfect suburban morning. "You live here." He didn't wait for an answer, already tugging her briefcase from her hand, flipping it open like it was a prop in his show. "What's a woman like you doing here dressed like this?" "Hiding something." Amara swallowed the rising panic. Her mother's lessons came back like muscle memory. Keep your hands visible. Speak softly, narrate your movements. "I'm an attorney," she said carefully, meeting his sunglasses with steady eyes. "I have paperwork for a legal aid event. My ID is in my purse." Carl didn't check it. He just smirked, stepping closer, his breath smelling faintly of coffee and authority. "We've had break-ins, you understand?" He didn't say what she understood, but Amara did. She'd understood it her whole life. A second cruiser pulled up. Officer Lisa Kavanaugh stepped out, sharp, bun-sharper glare. She circled Amara like a shark. "Put the bag down." "Step back," she barked, her voice carrying across manicured lawns. Amara placed her briefcase on the sidewalk, moving slow, narrating every inch. "I'm setting it down." Stepping back. Lisa crouched, rifling through files, flipping through confidential case notes like they were trash. "What's this medical records, drug charges?" she muttered loudly enough for neighbors to hear. A man walking his golden retriever slowed to watch. Curtains twitched. A teenager lifted his phone to record. Then Doug, a towering officer with stone eyes, grabbed Amara's arm and twisted it behind her back. She gasped in pain, struggling to keep calm. "Stay still," Doug growled. Carl's hand shoved harder on her shoulder. "Kneel," he ordered. "Officer, please, there's no need." Now his voice cracked like a whip. Doug's boot connected with the back of her leg, and she crumpled onto the concrete skin, scraping beneath her skirt. Lisa grinned as she snapped the cuffs on tight enough to bite through flesh. Phones came out. A woman whispered, "What did she do?" Another muttered, "They don't let people like her here." The humiliation burned hotter than the August sun overhead. Lisa yanked Amara's head back by her hair, forcing her face up for the cameras. "See? They all end up like this," she sneered. "Dressed up, acting smart, but look closer. It's always the same." Blood ran down Amara's wrist, mixing with the tears she couldn't blink away. Carl's voice was a hiss in her ear. "You people never learn." Then Lisa's hand froze on a pocket seam. She yanked out Amara's legally registered concealed carry pistol, a tiny Glock she carried after a stalker followed her home last year. Lisa held it high like a trophy. "She's armed," gasps, shouts. Carl drew his gun, pressing it hard against the back of her head. "Don't move, lady. You so much as twitch, I'll end this." Amara's heart pounded like a drum. She wanted to scream that she was licensed, that she was a lawyer, that she'd passed every background check the state had. But she knew her words wouldn't matter. Not to them, not here. They paraded her to the squad car like a captured criminal. By the time she reached the precinct, her knees were bleeding, her suit torn. Inside, Chief Frank Maddox leaned against a desk, smirking as his officers shoved her onto the floor. He handed her a form. "Sign it. Says you resisted arrest, had an unregistered firearm. Sign and maybe you'll see daylight this month." "I won't sign a lie," she said through gritted teeth. Frank crouched low, voice dripping venom. "Then you'll rot. And when this blows over, no one will remember your name." They laughed as Lisa cleaned the blood from Amar's wrist, not gently, but with the contempt of someone wiping up spilled coffee. Carl took pictures of her crouched on the floor, sending them off to a group chat, joking about another one put in her place. What they didn't know was that outside those beige walls, their performance was already viral. A teenager's shaky footage of a woman in a red suit kneeling on a lawn, a gun to her head, had spread like wildfire overnight. Hashtags exploded. Hashtag justice for Amara. Kneeling for no crime. By morning, protesters gathered outside the precinct, holding signs chanting her name. News vans lined the street. Civil rights attorney Mason Carter saw the footage and booked the first flight out. By the time Amara was hauled into a holding cell, Mason was at the front desk, his suit pressed sharp as a blade. "I represent Amara Price," he declared to every camera in sight. "She was assaulted, humiliated, and unlawfully detained. I want her released now." Frank Maddox sneered. "She had a gun." Mason held up laminated papers. "A registered gun, licensed by this state. You knew that? You still paraded her like a trophy." He turned to the press. "This isn't policing. This is a public execution without bullets." Then a neighbor named Helen, hands trembling, stepped forward with a USB drive. "My porch camera caught everything. Start to finish." The footage silenced the room. Carl's slur, "black trash," rang clear over the speakers. The video showed Lisa twisting Amara's arm until she screamed, Doug stomping her into the grass. Carl's gun pressed to her skull while neighbors watched. Gasps echoed through the lobby. A reporter whispered, "There's no going back from this." The mayor arrived within hours, face-pale voice shaking as she announced the suspension of Carl, Lisa, and Doug, and called for a federal investigation. Outside, thousands gathered chanting, "We will not kneel alone." Protesters of every race dropped to their knees in solidarity, wrists crossed behind their backs, recreating Amara's humiliation as a symbol of defiance. The image swept across the country, but not everyone came in peace. That night, a group of armed extremists opened fire on protesters. Chaos erupted, screams running feet, tear gas choking the air. The police used the violence as an excuse to crack down harder, swinging batons, firing rubber bullets. Amara stood frozen, Mason shielding her as chaos unfolded. And then, something extraordinary happened. One by one, people stopped running. They dropped to their knees again in the grass on the pavement in front of riot shields. Hundreds of bodies lined the street, silent hands crossed behind their backs. The chant rose, soft, powerful, unyielding. "We will not kneel alone." The cameras caught it all. A movement had been born. Soon the FBI raided Maple Grove's precinct. Files surfaced, years of officers being paid off by local businesses to target black residents, forcing public kneelings as a message. Threats against witnesses? Evidence of brutality buried under paperwork. And now it was all out in the open. Amara and her family were moved to a safe house guarded day and night. Yet threats poured in, messages promising violence, pictures of her home, her loved ones. One night, the FBI arrived breathless with news. Helen's house had been broken into, her footage nearly stolen. That's when Amara knew she wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. This was war. She took the stage at a national town hall. Her wrists still bandaged, her voice trembling but firm. "I was humiliated because I dared to walk in the wrong place with the wrong skin. But I will not be silent, because silence is exactly what they count on." The broadcast split-screened. Carl Jennings now suspended, his face pale as the footage replayed. His excuses crumbled under the weight of his own words. The nation watched, some in tears, some in fury. And then gunfire cracked outside the precinct during a live interview. Chaos flashed across the screen, police scrambling. Amara gripped Mason's hand, refusing to run. "If I run now," she whispered, "they win." The country leaned closer to their screens that night, witnessing not just a woman's courage but a nation's reckoning. The FBI announced a sweeping investigation into every officer named in the footage. Federal protection for whistleblowers. Charges filed against Carl, Lisa, Doug, and Chief Maddox. Months later, on the lawn where she'd been forced to kneel, a bronze statue was unveiled. It showed a black woman standing tall, hands raised, high wrists unbound, the words etched below, "Stand tall, never kneel alone." Kneel again. Even Carl and his disgraced colleagues were there, placing the final stone at its base, a gesture of humility, or maybe shame. Amara stood silently, tears on her cheeks, not for what had been done to her, but for what that moment meant. Children ran around the statue, tracing the letters, laughing. Maple Grove, once a place of quiet terror, was now a symbol of change. But as the sun dipped, low, casting the statue in golden light, Amara turned to Mason. "You know it's not over," she murmured. He nodded. It's never over. But today we won. And that's the thing about justice. It's never a straight road, never clean, never easy. It's a fight you wake up to every morning. What about you? If you saw someone humiliated on your street, would you speak up? Would you take the video or would you turn away? Drop your thoughts in the comments because stories like this don't change the world. People do. And maybe just maybe that person is you.